I just wanted to say the marital therapy research that I learned in my marital therapy class in Wheaton all those years ago does suggest that the more common ground you have, and we've talked about values extensively on the podcast. We talk about it pretty much every episode, because relationships where you share those common core values, they are more, he doesn't like easy, they are less
more smooth.
Contentious. Yeah, more smooth, less contentious. It's like money in the bank. It's just fewer things to fight about. And when you partner up with someone for 50, 60, 70, 80, however many years God gives you, there are going to be realities of life that are going to be challenging anyway. So the marital research suggests that the more you have in common, it's like I said, money in the bank, less to fight about. Now, to your point though, opposites do attract, and it can be very exciting to someone who's so different from you and they come from a different background, and that can be thrilling and exciting, like I said, but you also want to make sure that you temper that with enough common ground.
Yeah.
Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karin Anderson-Abril, here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliott Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth
to help us thrive in love and life.
So if you don't know my sister, this is Dr. Karin Anderson-Abril.
Hi.
She is teaching with us now, and so she'll be teaching developmental psych next fall again.
Yes.
And then we're trying to get her to do maybe cognitive or...
Yes.
Neuro. Thank you. That was very almost scary.
Yes, let's do it.
That's what we got. And that'll be in the spring next year. So sorry for graduates. You might not get to take that with her, but she's done a lot of research and study on neurology, on behavior. Her specialty is child development. That's what her PhD is in. And we've tag team on air now. Karen's been doing this podcast for 6 or 7 years.
A long time, yeah.
And we've been tag teaming. I was a guest many times early.
He was a special guest star that kept getting most engagement. They'd be like, when is Pastor Elliott coming back on? Because I had a lot of single women in my Instagram and my podcast community. And of course, ladies like to hear the male perspective, obviously. And he's worked with couples for all these years, 30 plus years. And because I wrote a book for single women to encourage them to never settle, stay true to yourself. And if you have to wait a bit, like I did, until you meet your person, so be it. Better to wait and marry the right person than to almost marry the wrong person, which I almost did, since we're just going to get to know each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
Kyle knows the story. I told him. I talked about it in child development. Anyway, all I was going to say about that was that, but then because he was such a big, you were in high demand with my Love and Life folks, so then he agreed to join as a co-host. So now we still talk about single issues, of course. That's our bread and butter, but we've moved into relationship because a lot of the folks who found my podcast, they started finding their person and getting engaged and married and children. So we want to have a more holistic approach to relationships, mind, body, and spirit, of course, which is where the pastor piece comes in, which is very helpful. We really don't believe we can thrive in love and life unless we're dealing with our mindset, like we were talking about the cognitive, and our body. Can't be eating all that processed food, those seed oils. So we talk about that. And then spirit, we have to have our relationship with God and our journey. And it's not like it has to be perfect, but we have to be seeking that if we hope to have a fulfilling life.
We studied birth order with Adler 2 weeks ago. This is the last born.
The baby.
This is the entertainer. This is the show woman. I'm quite social as well, as you know.
I was going to say, like, you're not?
Well, we were both born and raised on stage, so we have a lot of excitement, and we get the more people, the more crowd, the more excited we get, and occasionally we'll compete in that arena. Hopefully nothing significant here tonight.
It's fun, though.
I mean,
people like it when we spar a bit.
And our mama's here. So mama's here in the back. Yeah. She's the OG counselor. Sure, her graduate degree was in counseling. I don't want to say what year, but it was a while ago. So she's the OG counselor in the family. Karin got a clinical degree as well. Therapy in the city, like Chicago City, McCormick Place area. Yeah. So I give her a lot of props for going into the city. I was doing crisis work, but I was in Wheaton. Not quite as dramatic as
you had your issues
downtown
in Wheaton.
Chicago. I mean, crisis is crisis.
Crisis is crisis. I was working with kids in child welfare. So, I was 24 years old. I went from Judson to Wheaton to get my master's in clinical psych, and I wanted to save the world, don't you know? So here I go. I'm 24 years old. I'm going to save all the babies. And the heart was pure, but it is very rough. For any of you who have worked in the child welfare system, it's very, very difficult. And it tends to be one of the areas, again, for you guys as you start moving towards your careers, it tends to be one that is so hard because the children are so innocent and so vulnerable, and it really is hard for those who work. The compassion fatigue, secondary trauma can be really intense, and it tends to be one of the areas of social service where people really can't stay in it that long.
Yep, absolutely.
A few years ago, I started having trouble falling asleep, and I started taking melatonin because I thought it was a natural way to try to relax myself, calm myself down, and go to sleep. But it turns out that as a hormone supplement, melatonin can disrupt our other hormones, and we can build up an immunity to it. So when we started partnering with the wellness company, I was super excited to try their melatonin-free sleep aid called Restful Sleep. It includes passion flower, chamomile, valerian root, among other herbs, and natural ways to help calm us down and get us ready to go to bed. I've been using it for a couple months now, and Restful Sleep helps my mind and body quiet themselves and ease into sleep. If you've ever had insomnia, you know how brutal it is. The wellness company's Restful Sleep can help. Head over to twc.health/lovelife and enter promo code LOVELIFE at checkout for 15% off your entire order. That's twc.health/lovelife and promo code LOVELIFE for 15% off your entire order.
We've both done a ton of research, writing, podcasting, articles about love, about relationship, about romance. Karin and I have done this here several times now.
Yeah.
And she was going to be with me in the fall when I did the love through interpersonal relationships, but she couldn't get here. She's on the road or something, so I did that one on my own. But we enjoy this. We're going to dive into our notes here a little bit. We want this to be engaging. So just like you would do in class, if you have a question or a comment, or you want us to address something specifically, just go ahead and raise your hand. I might not be able to see you because of the lights, but raise your hand or just holler and ask the question, and we will take care of it. We want you to get more than just a presentation. We want you to be engaged.
Do they know your journey to love? Because I think that's also an interesting piece that
the
we
difference
bring.
Between us?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started dating at 16, and as Karin likes to say, I had about 2 minutes of not having a girlfriend.
That's a fact.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I'm
he was a Romeo. I'm just going to see, the little
desire.
sister can tell the tales that are all true.
That's right.
I started dating at 15, though.
You did. You went a little earlier, yeah.
The lifeguard at my Bible camp.
Nice
Not
start.
sure that was appropriate,
Hopefully
but
he was
Mom,
under
what was
18.
actually happening?
You think she knew?
I was 19.
Oh, you could have been arrested.
Looking back, I'm like, yeah, this is...
What's going on there?
Anyway.
It was the 70s and 80s.
Things were Gen X. It was like free range.
A little bit different. So I was in long-term monogamous relationships, 2 long ones, and then married. Now I've been married for 36 years this summer.
Praise God.
So I was married I just turned 22. And so that was really early, too early.
A week into 22.
Absolutely. It was pretty much graduated, boom, marriage. And Angie and I have told before, we struggled early in marriage. 2 really strong leaders, 2 very passionate, opinionated, stubborn leaders. And as I'm going to seminary and getting my counseling degree and want to specialize in family and marriage, we're struggling. And so I went to one of my professors, just like sometimes you guys come to me and talk about life. And you're like, Elliott, I don't know what's going on. Or Pastor Elliott, I need some help. That's exactly what I did with my professor. And he's the one who told me about premarital curriculum and asked me if we'd had any. I'm like, not really. And then he goes, let's walk through this. And then I would learn, go home, talk to my wife about it. We'd learn about each other better, things like we're doing in here and all the assessments we do. And then as we grew through that, I knew I was supposed to help train other people. I could just feel it, sense it, and immediately started training my RAs. When I was Wilson Hall RD for 6 years, my captains on my sports teams, when I was the coach of the basketball team, coach of the baseball team, and that's gone now to somewhere around 200 couples I prepared for marriage and did crisis, including our guest sound man, Brian Tripp in the back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Sound and video. Sorry, not to... So hopefully you could say it was effective premarital training, Brian, so we're not on... He gave me the nonverbal maybe, so just to have that there. And then got into the crisis work as a crisis family therapist and helping others figure out love and romance and relationship. Karin's story towards true love was quite a bit different.
Quite a bit. Yeah, I had, I think, a typical kind of experience. Had a couple of boyfriends at Judson, and then things just didn't work out. Like, okay, it doesn't work out. And then I'm in my 20s. I'm like, okay, something's going to happen. Nope, dry spell, desert, barren wasteland. This is before apps, people. It was rough trying to meet. I'm going to Willow Creek, going to the singles ministry,
That's right.
trying to meet And it just took a long time. And then I met a guy on my 30th birthday. I was in downtown Chicago at a club. It was a fun club, 70s and 80s music, just real low key, no velvet ropes and no people thinking they're cool. Anyway, so I meet this guy. He's a nice guy. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm feeling it, but give the nice guy a chance. Maybe because what you've been doing hasn't been working. So again, really on paper, a really solid fit for me. Kyle's heard this too because I went into this. He's like, yeah, I've heard this.
Come on, let's get the mic.
He's like, yeah, I can tell the story. No, but so I guess I wanted to share that a little bit just because sometimes you do meet your person young and you might have those struggles like you talked about. You're both really young, your early 20s, and you're not really fully formed as your identity as an adult yet. So you kind of develop together. And I was the opposite where I was just like, oh my gosh, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. And hey, God, like, am I meant to be single forever? And those questions and those doubts. And so, like I said, I met a guy who looked really good on paper, but I just wasn't feeling that romantic connection as much, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But I thought, give him a chance. And I gave him a chance for 3 years and then accepted a marriage proposal. And then a year later, 2 months before the wedding, I was like, no, can't do this. I tried to make a really good, decent, quality guy. I tried to make that a fit. I tried to make that the match that I wanted it to be. Which, sidebar, I think it's a little harder to know if the person isn't right for you when they're a really good guy. Mm-hmm. Like if they are abusive and down deep, you're like, I'm not being treated right. This isn't right. It's hard. It's in a way easier because and your friends are telling you like, seriously? Mm-hmm. But he was a quality human and I wish him the best, and we're not in contact anymore.
Had a good career. He was going to protect,
provider, protector, all those things. And so, but 2 months before, like my gut was just telling me this isn't the right thing. So I became a runaway bride, not as dramatic as the movies. We're not at the church, not walking down the aisle, but yeah. So then I was dating another guy for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden I'm 40, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah,
I did not expect this to be my path.
Yeah.
But then I met the right one. And so then, like we've talked about, even on the podcast, we talked about marrying later versus marrying earlier and the pros and cons therein. And so I met a man who was 46 and I'm 40 and he's recently divorced with 3 kids. And again, it's like, I did not play Barbie and Ken and walk Barbie down the aisle to Ken and be the second marriage. Woo-hoo! Everyone wants to be bride number 2.
Yeah.
No. But God has his way of redeeming whatever we've endured or gone through in life. And if a marriage doesn't work out, God can redeem that. And that has been my story. So I just want to share kind of, because I don't know where you guys are in your love journey. And we're going to talk about love tonight. And some of you may have had multiple heartaches already in you guys seem, you're like, 20-ish. Mm-hmm. But they may have already had some really hard knocks. And then, again, some of you may be in a relationship that started younger and trying to wrestle through that.
All right, so we're going to dive into the personality of love today. And starting with simply definition. So the top of your notes here. Love as an action and love as a feeling. First of all, we got to recognize that love is more comprehensive. And the English language does a poor job with love compared to many other languages. As we'll see in a minute, we'll talk a lot about the Greek, both from Lee's Many Colors of Love, but also from the Bible's definitions. So love as an action is a commitment to and adherence to loving actions towards another, oneself, or many others over a sustained duration. A commitment to and adherence to loving actions towards another, oneself, or many others over a sustained duration. We've talked a lot already in class about core bonding loves, right? Because Freud and Adler, the 2 theorists we've studied quite significant already, are all about psychodynamic, right? The past, the family of origin. So we've talked about these core loves, the caregivers, your siblings, your grandparents, your first primary people. And when we talk about attachment theory at the end of this class today, that is going to come full circle. Now let's look at love as a feeling. A deep feeling of affection and care for another person. A deep feeling. That's a funny phrase. Some people feel deeply all the time.
Why is he looking at me?
Because she's a deep feeler. Some people feel deep all the time. Some people feel deep only part of the time. But regardless, if you feel that sense of love, it is a deep feeling. We're big fans of animals. We love our dogs. Literally, I love my dog, not the same as I love my wife or my kids, but it's a deep feeling. Like if I think of my dog Twinkie, who's 12 now, if I think of her dying soon, I could cry in a millisecond, right? That's a deep feeling. We can love things besides people. We can love our work. We can love our friends, right? We can love many, many things. Our car, some people call their cars names and like it's a little weird. Let's look at some other ones. A strong or constant affection for and dedication to another. A strong or constant affection for and dedication to another. Karen's done some research and I believe some writing as well, maybe not published writing, but about laws of attraction and what brings attractionability to each other. But certainly if you know someone cares for you as a person, it helps you be more willing to care for them. The reciprocation of care, the reciprocation of attraction, right? Even think about like 5th grade. You get a little note from a girl or a little boy and says, so-and-so likes you or so-and-so thinks you're cute. Automatically, you're going to like that person a little bit more immediately. Even if they're a little Elliott on the playground and running you over, and then all of a sudden he writes you a note and says, I think you're cute or something, all of a sudden you're going to have a little more attraction, affection, care for another person. Third line there, a warm attachment, enthusiasm, or devotion. A warm attachment, enthusiasm, or devotion. Again, different people respond. What enthusiasm means to be can be very different to other people. But a general sense of enthusiasm when you've been married as long as my mom was, which was 58 years? 56 years. To still have that enthusiasm for your partner. I've been married now 36 this summer. To still have that enthusiasm, to still be excited about each other and getting to know all the differences of age and time and stages of life, a really important factor. And you know, I've taught you in other classes about working towards that connection does not mean it has to be drudgery, right? Just think about a fire, for example. Anybody like to light fires, burn them outside, put them in your fireplace? You have to work the fire a little bit to keep the fire burning. If you don't, it'll slowly die out.
Do they know the song?
They might not. You want to sing
Keep the fire burning, let it keep us warm.
Thank you.
The world keep on turning, let it... I don't know anymore.
That's all right. It's good.
Sorry,
Thank you for
Gen
that.
X.
Like for
They're
that
like
breakdown.
giving me like deadpan, like, lady, we do not know.
That's all right.
But
Well,
how you can't throw a
our
lyric
stage
like
life
that?
started with music on stage. So before
Yeah,
before
and also you threw a lyric right in
I
your
did.
talk.
The drums are here.
I know.
I could just go in and give you a little.
We could.
We could just go right there. So thinking about that, so all your relationships, all your friendships, but especially the romantic ones, take a little work. Doesn't have to be drudgery. Doesn't have to be super hard. Intentionality, affection, enthusiasm to grow. Last one, a feeling of brotherhood and goodwill towards other people. A feeling of brotherhood and goodwill towards other people. That's more the Greek word phileo, like Philadelphia, brotherly love. That's more what that is in the Greek if we compare that to biblical language. So a feeling of brotherhood and goodwill. One of the keys of being married 36 years, or like my mom was, 56 years, is a general sense of friendship between you and your partner. Super important. I'm very, very different than my wife. My mom was very different than her husband. In fact, my dad and me are very similar. My wife's very similar to my mother. Those opposites can be the form of the beautiful holistic friendship, or they can drive each other crazy. Recognizing that opposites often do attract, the research does say that, but in order to keep opposites together, it takes more intentionality, more recognition, more movement. If you marry someone or have a romantic partner that's more similar to you, you might have to do less work, but you, in my opinion, you can fade that or lose that quicker because the symmetry of the similarities makes it easy. We've had podcasts about should relationships be easy or should they be hard?
I have something to say.
She goes on the easy side. I go on the hard side. I want to challenge. I want to grow. Go ahead.
Right. Well, no, I just wanted to say the marital therapy research that I learned in my marital therapy class in Wheaton all those years ago does suggest that the more common ground you have, and we've talked about values extensively on the podcast. We talk about it pretty much every episode because relationships where you share those common core values, they are more, he doesn't like easy. They are less
more smooth,
contentious. Yeah, more smooth, less contentious. It's like money in the bank. It's just fewer things to fight about. And when you partner up with someone for 50, 60, 70, 80, however many years God gives you, there are going to be realities of life that are going to be challenging anyway. So the marital research suggests that the more you have in common, it's like I said, money in the bank, less to fight about. Now, to your point, though, opposites do attract, and it can be very exciting to someone who's so different from you, and they come from a different background, and that can be thrilling and exciting, like I said. But you also want to make sure that you temper that with enough common ground.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think the way you're wired, we're talking about the personality of love, so we're also talking about the personality of the individuals, and you're wired, you're a fighter, you're a lover, but you're also a fighter.
Yes.
And so you, I think, would be more prone to be bored, whereas I'm not bored that Dan and I don't fight every day. Yeah. Like, I'm actually not at all bored. I'm actually loving that. Like I don't need, you picked on me enough my entire childhood. I really don't need my husband to pick on me and to just start fights and instigate things.
Yeah, so. Angie and I are more debating personalities. So
yeah, you guys enjoy that.
Yeah, it's for us, it's not necessarily foreplay, but it is.
It's stimulating at some level, though.
Absolutely. It's successful in when you're both so opinionated and both so passionate. It keeps the liquidity and the fluidity like a conduit going for us. So for us in our marriage, it would not be appropriate for us not to have some debates and differences that are talked out and shared. And that makes us holistically better. For Karin and her personality and her husband, Dan, they don't need that. And it wouldn't be appropriate to have those kind of debates often. And based on personality, attachment style, and everything else, we'll talk more about that. So go into our first, we have shapes and colors today. Go into our first shape, because Karin's done a little more study on Sternberg's triangle than I have.
Yeah, this is just one of my favorite models because it's very clean and it's very easy to understand. And again, as I shared earlier, going back to my personal experience, why didn't my first engagement work? Why wasn't that a fit when you have a quality human who Elliott said, and he knew this guy for 4 years. He loved me dearly. He was a great friend to me. He was brilliant, so smart that I was very much intellectually stimulated by him, and we enjoyed the same things, had all those common core values that we talked about a moment ago. But if you look here at Sternberg's triangle theory of love, you can see, as I described that relationship, you can see that we had the liking, the friendship, we were buddies, we were nerds, let's go to a museum. Okay, let's go to the history museum. And we had that friendship element. We had the commitment. He was very loyal and faithful. He's not someone who was going to cheat on me. So we had part 2, but what we didn't have was that passion. At least on my end, I just didn't feel that zazazoo or the butterflies and that spark that you want to feel, because otherwise, let's just grab a buddy and get married. I mean, you want to have that. As Sternberg points out, there are these 3 elements why his model is a triangle. And as you see at the top, there's the liking, and then you've got the passion, the infatuation, he says on the lower left corner, and then the commitment is on the right corner. And I just want to make sure, because empty love, I don't know why that's...
Yeah, I'll explain that. Yeah,
that's if there's commitment and nothing else.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yep. Yeah,
so Sternberg's model, we talked about, I had the liking and I had the commitment. So you can see on the right-hand side of the triangle, I had the companionate love. We were buddies, we were pals, we were committed, no one's cheating. It was very secure and stable, and that's very attractive. And don't get me wrong, security in a relationship is critical, and Sternberg's arguing this. But what I was lacking was over there on the other side, the infatuation and the passion. And I just didn't want to be someone who was just marrying my pal. I wanted to also have the sparks. And I think that's how God wired us. We want to have that sexual enthusiasm and that, the butterflies, especially in those early days. You want to be like, I just can't stop thinking about him. And my stomach's in knots because there's that physiological attraction too. So looking at this model, again, you have the liking, you have the commitment, you have the passion, and then you can have any variation of all 3. If you have the total package, what we call, or just he calls it consummate love, where it's all 3 factors. And so I invite you guys, as you've thought about some of your relationships that you've had in the past, or some of the relationships you may have in the future, this model is very handy because you can kind of take a look and go, I definitely like him. And we definitely have the butterflies, the sexual chemistry, but maybe you're questioning his ability to be committed to you and his faithfulness, his integrities, and his ability to be faithful. Or you're questioning your own, because maybe you go 2 out of 3, but if I don't know, like I'm not feeling that this is someone that I can make those vows. And just again, sidebar related to this, I remember as I was deliberating and struggling to figure out, is it just cold feet when I was engaged? Or am I just expecting something that doesn't exist? A model like this was really helpful for me when I had learned it before and I dusted it off and I was like, no, I just don't have that third prong. And I remember thinking, walking down the aisle in a church, pastor, before God and everyone who loves me, and going...
Before me, as I marry you.
Wait, no, but the first time it was going to be Reverend Wolford.
You chose someone else?
Yeah, our childhood pastor. But Elliott did marry my husband and me, yes, which is wonderful. And that's exactly how it was supposed to be. It was meant to be that way. But no, I was going to go back to Cincinnati and 9th Street or Lakewood.
I know I'd get a part in it somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, but I remember imagining, can I make those vows? Can I say that with honesty? And I just remember thinking, I don't think I can say that. So I had to bounce. So again, it's just a great model for looking at all the differences. I mean, you probably have had maybe a relationship where you've had the passion and maybe the commitment, but you really don't like each other that much. You really weren't pals. You didn't have that sincere connection and the intimacy. And here we're talking about the friendship intimacy, according to Sternberg. So again, so if you have the liking, that's the intimacy. The romantic love could be passion and intimacy, but no commitment. And that's fine when you're younger and you're not expecting to get fully committed.
Yep.
Unless you've decided to be exclusive in a dating relationship to prepare to think about whether this is a fit for life. And then again, so you can have any configuration of the 3 elements.
Yeah, and so if you have consummate love, even at your age, and you get engaged, or you're planning to get engaged, but one of these factors gets broken, and the triangle gets cut open, he or she cheats on you, or they start changing personality. It's like once you're engaged, all of a sudden, oh, now I have her. It's usually guys who would change. And now they start getting a little mean or a little cold or a little distant. Or, of course, if the bond of the passion is broken through an affair or something, even if you had the consummate love, then with the brokenness of one of these angles, it can be, again, severed or altered permanently. And so once you have that consummate love, the commitment overall to honor that, to cherish that, to be invested in that is huge.
Well, you talk about, you do so much work with couples in crisis and in recovery. So you're saying if it's broken, though, you, from your experience, do have hope in restoration and that God can redeem and mend this bond. And I know we've talked about on the podcast, you have said that sometimes a relationship gets even stronger and deeper after a real huge crisis.
After a hit on one of these corners. It comes in from there. Any questions on the basic definitions of love we gave and the triangle? Anything that comes to mind, or a reflection or a comment in any case? Don't be embarrassed that you might be live.
Let me see. Yeah.
To thousands of people all over America and the world.
Not thousands at this point.
Go ahead, my friend.
What's the best of the 3?
The best of 3, I think, is got to be the commitment overall. But you can't have true commitment without the liking and the passion. Right? But there's a lot of research that the number one reason couples stay together is commitment.
So just deciding.
Simply deciding, the choice to be faithful, honorable, gracious.
And and that's a really good question, because when I was calling off my wedding, and then I'm in my 30s now, and I'm thinking a lot about this and thinking a lot, just again, because of what we do. Some people, maybe they don't need as much intensity with the romantic element. And they're like, yeah, I mean, I find him, he's cute enough, or he's attractive enough. And so the commitment is really key for them. They want to marry their best friend. And they're like, I mean, it's not like I've maybe been more attracted to my high school boyfriend. And so that's enough. And they make the decision. And I don't judge that unless after 10 years, you're on Facebook trying to reconnect with that high school boyfriend who was the really one, who was the one that you really thought was hot. So you have to be careful. You have to know yourself. Like if you're someone who's like, I really, if I had my best friend and that commitment, I'd be good. But I also challenge yourself to think about the future, which is really hard to do. It's hard to anticipate what's going to come down the pike. And I think you've probably seen some of those couples where they maybe thought they even had the consummate love, and then later realizing, shoot, it wasn't quite there. And that's why they're tempted to stray with someone an old flame.
Yeah, that's the vulnerability of early love. It is more vulnerable to conditional elements from the past that maybe sneak up. And we know maturity for males, minimum brain fulfillment, like when your brain's fully formed, is like 25. The average age of marriage now for males is now crossed 30 for the first time. So that's actually going to help marital solidification. Divorce rates are going down. And that later stage, your generation is getting married later. Many of you are going to get married early. That's fine. But that is helping as far as recognizing and understanding Sternberg's triangle. Any other comments or questions?
Just show of hands, and you're not on the gram right now, but how many of you have been in a relationship where, like, looking at this model, like for me, where I was sharing, oh, that's what was happening. I had the 2 out of the 3. I didn't have that third prong. Does any of that look like, that resonates? Excellent, yeah.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, thank you for sharing and engaging with us. Yeah.
All right, let's go to Lee's Many Colors of Love. I haven't used Lee's stuff a ton, but I really have found it enjoyable over the last couple of years, and now wanting to start teach it. So he talks about, this comes from a sociology side, more than the psychological side or more than the counseling side. So 3 primary colors of love, that's your first fill-in. The 3 primary colors of love: Eros, red; Ludus, blue; and Storge, yellow. If you remember your color wheel growing up, there's our 3 primaries. Now let's look at each of these a little bit, and you can relate them to Sternberg as well. And then you do have the little color circle on the back. I'm sorry that Justin doesn't have a lot of color printers, so you're going to have to fill in your own colors here. Karen's got the nice color version.
I have a color printer.
Yes, she does. So she has that picture there you can look at later. But so red is the Eros from the Greek mythology, and it's idolized sexual love. So the passionate side of Sternberg's triangle is the Eros, the erotic, idealized sexual love. Now, unfortunately, for the sex saturation culture we're in now, erotic has a term that's almost seen as derogatory or inappropriate, but that's not how these researchers mean it. They just mean it the same as Sternberg does, that the passion and the sexual commitment, the sexual fulfillment. Take my sexuality class on campus, we'll learn that's God's creation, that's God's beautiful gift. God's the one who ordained sex, not culture and not the evil one. And so it's really talking about the purity and the joy of that monogamous sexual relationship. The love at first sight, the physical sexual intimacy, quickly and powerful. Anybody here had a love at first sight scenario? I have. Sometimes I've thought I had the love at first sight and I never even ended up dating the woman. But it has those elements. And you might think I'm totally making this up, but my very first chapel, sitting next to Todd, Angie and her friends came in and sat like the exact same row over there. And I didn't say, oh, I'm going to marry her. It wasn't one of those crazy ones like a romantic novel on Hallmark. But I did remember seeing her and going, that was interesting, right? Just having that, just the situational attraction. And then I didn't really talk to her for a year and a half. But she was in all the same education classes as my friends. And so then I would hear about her occasionally. And what would I hear? She's sassy. She's competitive. She's opinionated. I'm like, ooh, I like that idea even better.
Except you had another sassy
But I was already with the sassy opinionated.
This other woman strutted on by in the chapel.
Yes,
and
I had some infatuation, but I didn't have a lot of liking.
Yeah,
right? And
that's a great example, actually.
Had the passion connection and even some commitment, but sometimes the opposites and styles were so different that we didn't like each other that much. But it was my loyalty that actually kept me in it longer than I should have been.
So the commitment piece was anchoring you guys together when your head even knew.
Absolutely. I knew long before mom and dad and others said, are you sure this is the one to keep dating? I knew long before that. But that commitment and that connection, and she'd gone through some really, really difficult things in her past.
So your empathy for
my
her.
empathy, my social work heart started. It was literally like I was her counselor, not her boyfriend. And that's a disaster. That's never worked.
Not good.
I thought it was all training eventually. God was just training me for my career.
And but we wouldn't recommend that as a foundation for a lifelong marriage and partnership.
So then the last line for Eros lovers are very affectionate and open in their communications. the kind of person who'll come up to you and go, man, you just look awesome. And you're like, whoa, what are they saying by that? Are they trying to get a date, or are they just being flirtatious? People who are strong in that red color of arrows are very communicative about and very touchy with their affection. Ludus is from the Latin word for play, and it means a self-centered love. From the Latin word for play, a self-centered love. Ludus lovers, they're not based on feelings or emotions. It's more like a strategic love. And if you think about that, if it's a little bit self-centered, a little bit self-serving, a little bit narcissistic, without being a narcissistic disorder, just a little bit narcissistic, it is more strategic than it is based on their emotion. It could be simply based on the physicality, the attraction ability, or social status. You're dating the star basketball player, or you're dating the prom queen. It could be a strategic scenario that you'd like to be more socially engaged, involved, and connected. Despite that self-centered perspective, they're normally pretty fun to be with. They're normally pretty outgoing people. And if you go down to the bottom, you can see that Ludus and Eros tend to be more male-styled, not exclusively, but more male-dominated primary colors of love.
So we're not like categorizing ourselves as one or the other. I'm not familiar with this model, so I'm learning.
No, we're not, and that says down at the bottom there.
Okay,
Talks
so
about that.
we're gonna have certain high levels of Eros, perhaps, and lower level of Ludus. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
The colors, you're looking more at the identification of kind of the side of the circle, rather than specifically this is me or this is me.
Okay.
So yellow, then, the last of the primaries, the storge, from the Greek word for affection, it's friendship-based love. So it's interesting that Lee's theory says self-centered love is a primary love.
Yeah. Well,
That's how I'm looking at them. Is there a selfish side of love that's okay? What do you guys think? Just go ahead and talk. I can't see you half the time. John?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends on like whether or not, because it is a commitment thing, but it's also in some cases like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a consenting thing in some way, like whether the partner is okay with a specific situation or not, and if they're okay with that, then is it self-centered? Not really, because it's a choice for both in that regard instead of just individual. So it kind of depends in that way, I think.
Chase, what you got?
I'm just thinking back to Jesus, and Jesus shows us that love is very sacrificial, and I feel like when you're self-centered, it's hard to be sacrificial. To show like the purest form of love, I wouldn't want to have a whole bunch of self-centeredness wrapped in it. So I would say no.
Yeah, and I think you're both covering important points, and he doesn't mean selfish love. So it's a little bit of a variable here. He's talking about more the self-centered. So I need certain needs from my wife fulfilled, right? And she needs certain needs from me fulfilled. I'm not talking sexual here. I'm talking about life, just connection. What are our values? What are our standards for the house being clean, for picking up kids from games or events or structure, organization, transactional elements of the home? Is it selfish of my wife to want me to follow through on specific things of commitment for the family? Of course not. So is that a selfish love or a self-centered love? No, maybe it's a family-centered love. But you hear what he's saying there, that there's elements. We are individual people. And what we teach on the podcast and in counseling is that you don't want to lose your independence in marriage. You want to build interdependence and not codependence. And so, again, it's not saying be selfish in love, and Chase kind of beat the punch of a secondary because sacrificial love's coming. But the whole context of we have a center of self. We have a spirit that needs certain things, and that's not necessarily selfish.
Well, even our commandment is to love our neighbor as ourselves. So we are to love ourselves. Does that mean, by definition, that's selfish?
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
It could be.
Yeah, if it's not.
It could be. But I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, the term altruism, you guys may have talked about that in your social psych classes. I mean, there's research. There's theories that say altruism, which is totally sacrificial love, like Christ demonstrated for us. And there's psychologists who say, there's really no human on the planet that can do that. And in our humanity, I mean, we know that we have the Holy Spirit within us when we become Christians, but in and of ourselves, can we ever truly love completely selflessly?
Yeah.
Or is my desire to love my husband, is there still a part that's like, yeah, because I'm going to have my needs met as well? So, yeah, there's tension there. And I don't think what you're talking about here sounds more like transactional, like you said, where it's more an arrangement.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the trophy bride and I'll marry the man with all the status and the money. And that's kind of what that's
Yeah, and Lee in his theories does talk about specifically the love that Chase was talking about and you're inferring from Christ, that our pure humanity cannot do it the same way, but we can enter elements of it or be in it. So I don't know his faith background or not.
Yeah, I think we strive for it. But even when we donate or we volunteer, there's still that human element that's like, we're told in the Bible to not let the left hand know what the right hand's doing. But how many of us really are that altruistic that we really don't want anyone to see our good works? We kind of like, well, you can go ahead and check me out.
And Christ even says to let our works be known so that people glorify him.
So there's
right. So there is a paradox and a polarity to that. Let's go back to Yellow Storga though, so I can finish because I got myself off track. Friendship-based love, develop romantic connections through friendship and time. And that's like Karin was saying earlier, that if someone has the companionship piece, the connection piece, the commitment, and the liking, and their eros side isn't that strong or isn't that necessary, that could be enough to have a consummate marriage that works wonderfully. And they would probably have a lot of storga, a lot of yellow in them on the colors. Relationships lack the passionate highs, but they also lack the depressing lows. And for some people, that kind of steadiness might be exactly what is needed. I would say that many people that have grown up in really contentious, argumentative, conflictual families with a lot of yelling, screaming, abuse, maybe bad, angry divorces, they might be very prone to look for a more consistent, stable, secure, storga-style love. Those are the primary colors. So just as I make you do always, just do a little check mark or a little ranking, 1, 2, 3, just off the cuff, off your spirit. What order of those do you need for you in your life? Some of you are already in a relationship. Some of you are not. Some of you are married. Got one shout out besides us on the stage here.
All right.
So just putting down what element. Let's look at our secondary colors of love now. Pragma, mania, and agape. Pragma is the green, mania is the purple, agape is the orange. And those are the colors, obviously, that combine. So green is the pragma from the Greek for deed or matter. And Lee says that's simply pragmatic love. What did Sternberg cause his? That was very similar. He had it on the triangle. That's very similar, complementary to the pragmatic love.
So pragmatic's just going to have the commitment and not necessarily the romance?
Yes, exactly.
So
it's the companionship.
Yeah. So you do like
so
each
pragmatic
other.
and companionship.
Okay.
So the second line there is the love must be stable, secure, and orderly. So my wife, for example, has a really interesting combination of the eros and the pragma. The intensity, the passion. She likes to debate. She likes to argue. And yet, as a country girl who wants consistent, structured, linear movements, that pragmatic love. The love must be stable, secure, and orderly. Relationships are calm and without conflict and peaceful. That's what's desired from someone who's strong in the green or the pragma. The purple is the mania from the Greek word for frenzy or madness, intense or obsessive love. This is a fun line, the second line here. So it's intense or obsessive love. Mania lovers are in love with being in love. Do you have any friends like that? They could have one great boyfriend or girlfriend over here and they're like crazy about them. This is the one, this can be great, this is amazing. 3 months later, you see him again. How's your dude? Oh, we broke up. I'm with another guy now. He's the most amazing guy. And it's just boom, right to the next one. Love being in love and kind of infatuated with love movies and love shows and getting involved in other people's love life as well. And obsessed with it. So mania lovers are in love with being in love and obsessed by it. And relationships are chaotic and full of emotions and often jealousy. So like the fullness of that passionate circle. That's the mania. That's the purple. So that's the eros red with the ludus blue combination. Then the orange is the agape from the Greek word for selfless. That's the sacrificial love. Chase was reading ahead and decided he was going to bring that up right away for us. That's the sacrificial love. Agape lovers put interest of partner ahead of their own. And it's a spiritual love, submitting to God and each other for the peace in relationship. So agape is the red of eros mixed with the yellow of storge. So that's the red, yellow to get to the orange for those of you like me who didn't pay attention for your first 9 years of school in your color combinations. So those are the secondary ones, the green, purple, and orange. So now here's some generalities here for you. Men tend to be more ludus and eros as primary. Women tend to be more eros and storge as primary. So Lee would tell us that all of us, and God's word and science back this up, that sex is a drive. It's not just this interesting thing we'd like to do. It's a biological drive. And so Lee would say that therefore eros is a part of every human being as a primary. Now it can have different looks, different shapes, different forms. But then ludus is more of the masculine side, and storge is a little bit more on the feminine side.
Well, that speaks to, because in the storge it's saying that the romantic connection can develop through friendship over time. We've talked about that, where men are typically more sight stimulated. A guy's going to know, like you did with Angie in chapel, I find her attractive or I don't. And that's going to be more of an immediate judgment, whereas a woman can be like, oh, he's pretty cute, or he whatever, he's kind of whatever, but then he's funny, or he's really kind, or he's really smart. And so the attraction then develops, and then maybe
it's holistic.
Can catch her off guard sometimes.
Yeah, well, your first Judson boyfriend, I remember, because he was one of my friends and teammates, great guy, awesome guy. And when you told me he would ask you out or something, you're like, it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't, for him, he was like crazy about you instantly, right? It was visual attraction ability.
You.
Yeah, you deserved it. But I remember like 2-3 months later, he said, oh, I'm in love now. Yeah. It was the holistic thing. Then his character and his friend, his socialness, all that. That's example perfectly here in that context.
It grew.
Yeah. All right. The second line here then. Eros, agape, and storge love colors have more positive view of romantic love. If you're interested in these colors of love, just look up Lee's colors there, and there's all kinds of cool research and familiar explanations for all these differences. I just wanted to give you high-level stuff here. So Eros, agape, and storge love colors have more positive view of romantic love. Luda, mania, and pragma love colors have more negative view of love. It doesn't mean they're against love or don't want romantic love. It's just a little bit of that pessimistic side, a little bit of that optimistic side. And again, if you think of self-centered or obsessive love, or just super generic friendship love, you could see why that might have a little bit of a less exciting, positive outlook about what that love looks like, and it's probably going to be more of those that build into potential love. We're not born with just one love style. So we're not trying to find an identification here and go, oh, I'm all Eros. And experiences will alter or direct our love. So if you have a love relationship that's like mania with Eros and it just flames up terrible, awful stuff happens to it, abusive stuff and jealousy or multiple affairs or stuff, that experience alone, though that's a primary for you, might move you another direction later. If any of you ever had a rebound dating experience, we often rebound to a very different style. Right? We had one and it was like, well, there's some good things, but it went terribly wrong. It happens a ton in second marriage.
Well, I can speak to that. After I called off my engagement, on my engagement, I had the commitment and I had the intimacy, the friendship, but I didn't have the romantic, passionate piece. And then the next guy I dated, I had all the romantic piece and the friendship, but he was a filmmaker, saying that in quotes, that's harsh, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a little harsh.
It was harsh. But he was not stable. I mean, we dated exclusively, but he wasn't in a position based on his artistic sensibilities, just the way he was wired. He was not able to commit. So, but having not had the romantic piece with my ex-fiance, I went in the opposite direction as that rebound to like, I got to have the romance. We'll worry about the commitment later. And then that didn't end up working out because it was never the consummate package, the total package. It was never the consummate love that Sternberg talks about. But just a great example.
And the research says that men will be more willing to enter into a marriage that doesn't have all the stability and commitment. And most women will not. That's great common sense, women. That's much smarter than men in that regard. And so that's kind of what they're talking about in Lee's. Then the last line there is being closer on the chart in color here in the circle is better for love style matches. So again, you can't quite see the colors on your black and white circle there, but just kind of put a little check mark or an asterisk or star, which 2 or 3 you feel are best for you, and maybe those of you who are engaged already, you know who you are. See where your future spouse is on the line there, and then those of you who are not, just look at that and get a little context. And then give us some comments or some thoughts on Lee's color of loves here. What's up, Adrian?
Well, what's the one from before the last blank space, before better?
Where a new love color can be birthed from a previous one? Did I not have that fill in? Sorry. A new love color can be birthed from a previous one. I went into examples without giving you the words again. Sorry about that. Chase.
What was pragmas, like where the love blank is? What was that again?
Intense or obsessive love, or both. Intense, they're covering themselves for the quiz now. They're getting the fill-ins.
Yeah, they sure are. Wait, I was going to say that's mania.
Oh, sorry, I'm wrong. Oh, pragma was pragmatic love.
Right.
Sorry, Chase.
Mania is going to be intense, like manic, and pragmatic is pragma. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
What's the last one for orange?
Last one for orange, the last line. A spiritual love, submitting to God and each other for peace. And that's not me adding, that was from Lee's work. When I'm introducing people's theories, I don't take a bunch of liberties first time through. I'm going to make sure we're appropriately. I'm saying that for Karen's benefit because sometimes I'm a little loose with those things and she's not happy with me.
I'm about the citations. Whose work is this? I'm not plagiarizing.
This is Lee's. All this is Lee's stuff. I didn't add a bunch. I'm giving some insight or thoughts to it.
Yeah.
Any commentary on that? Do the colors make sense to you? Does it feel applicable at all, or do you like Sternberg's triangle better?
The triangle. Triangle, I feel like makes a little more sense.
A little more pragmatic sense for you? Are you a pragma lover?
Yes.
I think it's the visual of it, because I'm still looking at this circle, trying to understand. Like just the visual piece is a little bit less.
Where's your color? Your color copy.
Well,
you had that.
I do.
That helps.
But I still don't understand if I'm mania. I mean, I'm touching Eros and Ludos here. Does that mean I definitely have that too?
No, what it's saying is that if those elements, you want to be near someone, right? So if you have some mania and they're saying the primary color of Ludus might be a mice match or Eros.
So this is about where I am, then I should be trying to partner up with someone who's
close to you on the color.
Okay, see,
You were
I
not
didn't
the
get
only one
it.
confused.
No, I was like, I have questions.
No, we'll do just the words, not the. You're not going to have to color anything in for next week.
Well, and I wonder if there's an online quiz for this that might be fun.
I'm sure
for,
there is.
Yeah, those are always fun to take, and then you can kind of see where you are.
Why would you want to look for Ludus in like my opinion? Like it doesn't seem logical.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I should use different language again, Chase. It's not like you're looking for it. It's just saying, and this happens in marriage context all the time, trust me in my crisis work, that two people that are a little more independent often find each other attractionable and get married, and they wrestle to get that commitment piece going, but they're drawn to each other for their independence. Like, they don't need me too much. They got their own space. So that might be why you would say, well, I need someone who's just as independent as me. I've counseled many major executive females through our podcast that reach out to ask for some help from me. And they'll tell me, I intimidate people. I'm a CEO of a major company. And then we talk about it. And I often tell her, you need to find someone who's got a similar status and scale of work. Look for an attorney or someone who's the head of their firm, because they're going to be not intimidated at all by your power, your status, your position, your independence, your 60-hour work week. They'll actually find that attractionable. And that would be maybe two Ludus sides there a little bit that would actually work. Does that help explain a little bit, or Adrian?
So I'm just confused about this, about the circle. I feel like it's just the circle, but like, are you saying, is it saying that mania and storage, I think, right? Is it saying that those two are just like polar opposites?
Not completely. It's not necessarily a direct opposite thing. It's just saying that they are coming out of, Storge is coming out of as a primary there and moving forward close to Eros, Pragma, and Ludus. It doesn't mean it's a polar opposite. I know a lot of the stuff we look at are opposites, and the spirit animals we did and all that, and conflict animals from interpersonal. There's a lot of opposites. This is more like this fluid, just like color is more fluid. Lexi.
So you wouldn't say it would be concerning if you found that your color and your partner's color were not close to each other?
Yeah, and what I'd say if you find that is then look for the ones in between, and that's probably your common ground. And building those up even in some capacity.
I want to speak to the Ludos thing too, because I look at that and I kind of feel the same way
you and Chase are upset about it?
I'm okay. And again, I just want to ground it with a personal experience. So I dated this guy after the other one who was no commitment. This other guy, and he was now very grounded and definitely driven and had the commitment possibility. But what happened is that he came on to me too strong too early. What made me feel was that it was like he didn't know me well enough to be trying to move the relationship forward as quickly as he did. And what it made me feel was like, oh, this is just, you look good enough. Yeah, you'll do. Let's fast track this to get married. What it felt to me was just like, too strategic. And like the self-centeredness was like, I want a wife. You're good enough. I wanted him to know the fullness of who I am and be excited about not just whatever he saw.
Last-born validation.
That's what I needed.
Absolutely. But that's a good example.
I don't know if that's what it was. That was when I'm looking at that and you were like, I don't know about that. That's what was rubbing me the wrong way. It was just seemed, too transactional, too an arrangement.
And if we look through this through the lens of Christ, obviously Ludus is the least biblically applicable, but it doesn't mean people who have a natural tendency or been through experiences that have made them a little more independent, a little more self-sufficient, that they shouldn't get romantic love also.
Yeah.
So you can think of that piece too, Chase, self-sufficiency. And that is difficult. An over self-sufficient personality and love style can be tricky. Constantly feeling like, well, I don't need you to help me, so therefore I'm fine. And the partner's like, I just want to sacrifice. I just want to give you. No, I don't need it. I'm good, right? That kind of thing can be difficult, even if it has good reasoning for that.
Do you think for like a non-believer, Buddhists and mania are pretty similar?
Yeah, I mean, they can be for sure. Yeah, there's similarities all over the map here. It's not a oppositional, like when we get into Chapman's love next here, there's more that are kind of partnering.
Love and Life with Dr. Karin and Pastor Elliott is produced by Tim May and executive producer Dr. Karin Anderson-Abel. For more information about Love and Life, please go to loveandlifemedia.com.